Drink your coffee, read your sports, listen to the Dream Report.
Monday morning, May 11th, 2026.
This week, the same iron that sold at list price had a dealer who barely made money on it, a buyer who may be entitled to a tariff refund on components, and an appraiser who pulled cost data that was written before either of those things was true.
Prices are up, margins are down. For some imports, the tariff you baked into the cost approach may have a refund attached.
Sandhills Global and Bloomberg Intelligence, in their first quarterly dealer survey out last month, put a number on the margin squeeze. They looked at Q1 2026 dealer performance across the heavy equipment space.
Construction equipment pricing was up mid-single digits on average in the first quarter, but 86% of dealers reported their margins were flat or down. This is the first quarter of this survey series. We finally have a baseline for how much cost absorption is happening at the dealer level.
When asking price rises but margin compression, the market is absorbing cost pressure rather than passing it. The dealer is paying more for inventory and floor plan financing, but the buyer is refusing to cover the spread.
That is a different signal than a healthy price rise. A rising comp price with margin compression underneath it deserves a different narrative in a sales comparison approach than a rising price driven by genuine demand. Appraisers working the construction segment are increasingly separating the price signal from the margin signal when writing sales comparison narratives. A dealer holding the line on price just to break even changes how we view the stability of those comps.
That is a different signal than a healthy price rise. A rising comp price with margin compression underneath it deserves a different narrative in a sales comparison approach than a rising price driven by genuine demand. Appraisers working the construction segment are increasingly separating the price signal from the margin signal when writing sales comparison narratives. A dealer holding the line on price just to break even changes how we view the stability of those comps.
We saw similar diversions in the commercial fleet data last week. ACT Research published their Q1 2026 figures, and Transport Topics reported the details in late April.
New Class 8 retail truck sales hit 41,023 units for the first quarter. That is down 21% year over year.
Used Class 8 truck sales moved the exact opposite way. March 2026 saw 24,900 used units sold. That is up 10.2% year over year and up 9.8% from February. This is the clearest example of new and used moving in opposite directions in the same asset class. When a fleet manager is doing the math on truck replacement, a 21% drop in new sales suggests buyers are holding. The 10% rise in used volume is absorbing that held demand. Buyers are competing for fewer available units in the secondary market. The used Class 8 comp pool is compressing, which working truck appraisers saw in their own data well before the ACT numbers confirmed it. Fleet managers are running their current trucks longer, which pushes the meter readings higher on the units that do finally hit the secondary market.
We can pair that with the dealer margin story from Sandhills and Bloomberg. New iron prices are rising, dealers are not making money, and buyers are moving to used.
That feedback loop is worth noting in a market conditions paragraph. The friction between the cost of new equipment and the cost of capital is pushing volume into the used market.
The cost inputs driving those new iron prices are getting a major revision this week. General Motors published their Q1 earnings report on April 28th.
GM disclosed it expects approximately $500 million in tariff refunds under the IEEPA refund process. This stems directly from the February 2026 Supreme Court ruling.
GM also lowered its gross tariff cost estimate for 2026 to $2.5 to $3.5 billion. That is down from their previous estimate of $3.0 to $4.0 billion.
When an OEM is forecasting $500 million in refunds, this is not a technical customs detail. It is a material cost input shift.
GM components flow through machinery and equipment, consumer vehicles, and commercial fleet. The replacement cost on tariff-era equipment just got a revision footnote.
That brings us to the administrative side of the refunds. Customs and Border Protection launched the CAPE portal on April 20, 2026.
Phase 1 covers unliquidated entries and entries liquidated within 80 days of a CAPE submission. CBP expects refunds within 60 to 90 days of an accepted submission, according to CBP guidance published by the National Law Review in Sidley, Austin.
The portal has been live for 2 weeks. Equipment importers who bought Chinese origin machinery during the tariff window are on the clock now.
Trade Council for Heavy Equipment Importers have flagged that the 80-day window from submission is the operative clock for Phase 1 claims.
The GM number and the CAPE portal are the exact same story at 2 different scales. We have one OEM-level shift and one transaction-level mechanism.
For appraisers valuing tariff-era equipment, the cost approach inputs are in motion. Not because the appraisal is wrong, but because the underlying data is being revised by the very parties who paid the tariff.
The indices we pulled this week were written before 3 of these 4 data points existed.
Appraisers are using the market conditions paragraph under Standards Rule 7-2 to document cost inputs instability. Putting that context on the page explains why replacement cost and current market value might look disconnected right now.
Documenting that the cost approach inputs are mid-revision puts the current market reality on the record.